Hello, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Today is May 11th, 2020. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. Let me know if you can hear me okay, if the audio is coming through. And also, I just want to know if it's just me or if everyone is having problems getting into the virtual classroom. If you wouldn't mind, let me know if you're having issues. It's always good to know if you guys are not able to access this, so I can forward this information on to the authorities, that I can pass it along to let them know that you guys are having access problems. This is also, if this happens during the week for an extended period of time, if you're not able to access the server, it's always good to let me know. Of course, if it's just, maybe a brief outage, there's not a lot we can do, but if it's an ongoing problem, please let me know throughout the week so that, again, I can inform those that have some control over the server, that it's good information and good feedback for them if you guys are having problems. Okay, so.
I do
uh,
can. I can actually go in, teacher.
all right. I'm sorry, did you say you were also having problems accessing?
No, no, no. I said no. I can. I can access.
Oh,
I don't
you
have any
can.
problem. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like Ale, you're saying you're not able to access. Is that true right now?
No, teacher, I can.
Oh, you can. Okay.
I'm able to access. Yes.
Okay. All right. So maybe it's just me then. Maybe I'm not sure why I'm not able to access it this morning, but that's fine. Today we're going to do an activity that we're going to be basically in Microsoft Teams and in Zoom today. And I want to begin by explaining we had our first draft due last Saturday. Many of you have uploaded your draft, and for those of you who were able to complete the first draft and upload it, those of you are going to you guys are going to get more out of today's live session because we're going to work in with our writing partner, much like what we did in Unit 1, to look at each other's work and to basically provide peer feedback. And what I did is I went through your essays, those of you who completed the first draft, and I have a list of some points that I would like to look at. So I want to begin by basically assigning you guys into breakout rooms. We're going to spend most of today's live session not in the breakout rooms, but I want us to begin working in the breakout rooms so that you can get with one of your partners to share your email, to share your Word documents. So I know that for some of you, this might be difficult depending on if you're accessing today's class using a cell phone versus a computer, which would be, I think, a little bit easier. But today I want you to pair up and share your document with your partner. And today, as a whole group, I want to go through point by point different uh, different things that I want us to look at when you're revising your first draft. And I want you to look at your partner's document. I want you to be able to try to open up your partner's document to view the document in today's session. Now, I also would like for you to leave feedback in your partner's Word document. And you can either do that in class today if it's easy for you to access the document and edit the document and leave comments. You're encouraged to do that today in class as we go through point by point different aspects about your writing. But if it's too difficult to actually make comments, you can leave notes to yourself looking at your partner's document, and later after class go into the document and leave comments, leave feedback. What I want to do is to give everyone today an opportunity to check each other's work and make changes today to submit your first draft. In other words, I'm giving everyone, I'm going to extend the date for the first draft until today. All right. And for those of you who uploaded your document already last Saturday, we're going to make changes and make a better first draft. And I would like all of us to resubmit for a grade for the first draft. Again, today's going to be the day. You'll have all day today till middle of the night to upload your first draft. Again, those of you who uploaded last Saturday, you're going to upload again. Even if you're happy with your first draft, which I think all of us have room for some improvement, but even if you don't make any changes, I would like everyone to submit your first draft by today. And here's where I would like for you to upload your first draft, because I just want to make sure there's no issues with the server, because maybe it's just me, but again, I was not able to access the server. But today, the first draft is going to be uploaded in Microsoft Teams. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now, so hopefully you all can see my screen. And if you go under Files, under the General channel, you should see a folder called Argumentative Essay First Drafts. And here's where I would like for you to upload your Word document, your Microsoft Word document, your first draft. Again, after you've made changes after today's live session. Okay, we're going to go over some points. We're going to work together with our partners, our writing partners, to make any final changes to our first draft. Those of you who have not completed your first draft, you're best to spend the time right now to complete your first draft, and then come back to this recording to see any of the points that we talked about today. That's going to be your best use of time. If you haven't completed your first draft, my suggestion would be not to participate in today's live session, because again, we're going to be working with a final first draft, and you're going to get the most out of today's live session if you have already completed your first draft. So regardless of where you're at, if you finished the first draft and you're working on final changes for the first draft, or you haven't finished and you're finishing it for the first time, I would like everyone to upload your first drafts here in this folder as a Microsoft Word document. And I would ask that you name the document by your first name. Just put your first name, please, on the name of the document, so that I can easily identify who the person is. Some of you are using a title page with your name, and that's great. That helps me to identify who you are. Some of you are not, and that's not required, but it's hard to know who it is if I don't have a name, at least on the name of the file. So again, this just makes it easier for me to identify whose file it is. Okay, so please put just your first name, is fine, on the name of the file when you upload it to Microsoft Teams. You do not have to upload anything else to the virtual classroom for this first draft, for this assignment. Okay, I'm going to grade all of the first drafts based on the files that you upload to this folder in Microsoft Teams. All right, okay, so today, what I'd like for us to do is I'm going to set up some breakout rooms, and just to assign you groups. All right, and I want you to go into your breakout rooms and decide on one person to team up with. Okay, I'm going to set up rooms between 2 to 3 members. If you have 3 members, just choose one partner, one writing partner, to share your documents. Okay, so try to share your document with your partner so that your partner can access the documents. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms. Again, this is going to be very similar to what we did in class in Unit 1. All right, so you're going to share your document so that they can go in to your document today in today's live session. All right, so let me take a look here. So let's see, we want to have, all right, I'm going to go ahead and open up all the rooms. And I would ask for you to, again, go into your breakout rooms, find a partner, choose a partner to share your document. And once you've shared your document and you can access each other's documents, I would like for you to come back to this main room and we'll begin looking at each of the different points to look at. Okay, now before I create the open rooms, are there any questions so far about basically anything that I've described so far?
Just to make sure, do we have to resubmit our first draft to Microsoft Teams, right? To the borrow file and name it as our name?
That's correct. Yes, I would ask everyone to resubmit your first draft. Okay, so again, I'm basically extending the first draft due date to today. But those of you who have already completed your first draft are going to get more out of it because today we're going to have time to work together to improve our first draft. But yes, I would like everyone to submit your first draft, your Microsoft Word document, identifying the document, the name of the file using your first name, and uploading it to Microsoft Teams in the folder that I showed you here a few minutes ago. Yes. Okay, any other questions, guys?
Are we going to use different breakout rooms or how are we going to access those other?
Okay, I'm gonna open up the rooms here, but I haven't opened them up now because I don't want everyone to go in. I want to make sure there are no questions before I open up the breakout rooms. As soon as I answer all your questions, I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms. And then you can go into your breakout rooms. And this is just a few minutes in the breakout rooms for you guys to decide on your writing partner and share with your partner your file so that your partner can open up your Word document. Once each of you can open up your Word documents from your partner, I'm going to ask that everybody come back to the main room as we are here. And I'm going to go and I'm going to begin with the first point and ask you to take a look at your partner's work for each of these different points and try to explain each of these points. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. Again, please go into the breakout rooms briefly, partner up, share your document, make sure you can open up your partner's document, and then return to this main room. Okay. If anyone has questions about how to join your breakout room, let me know. There should be some indicator, I think along the bottom perhaps, where you can enter into your breakout room. So Eileen, Ale, make sure, let me know if you have questions. Omar, Damaris, Lisette, Mariana, let me know if you have any questions about how to access your breakout room. When you guys have finished and you're back into the main room, if you could just let me know through the chat or through with your microphone, let me know that you have partnered up and that you have access now to your partner's document, please, just so that I know that there are no issues. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Okay, all of the breakout rooms now have been closed. Hopefully now you have had a chance to share your document with your writing partner, and hopefully now that you're able to access your writing partner's document. Again, today in class, if it's too difficult to actually leave comments today in class, go ahead and make notes. Hopefully you access your partner's document, make notes, check the document, and if you have some suggestions about how to change the document, you can go in later and leave comments to your partner's document. All right, so let's take the first point, and I'd like for you to take a look at your partner's document and check first to make sure that your partner has references at the bottom. And I would like for you to check, and I'll give you a few minutes here. I'd like for you to check to make sure that all references have a citation and all citations have a reference. There should not be a reference with no citation, and there should be no citations with no reference. So check your document, your partner's document. And if you need to make some suggestions, if you're able to access it here in class, go ahead and leave a comment in Microsoft Word. If not, leave a note to yourself to remind you to go later to your partner's work to leave a comment in the document. I'll give you a few minutes to check your partner's work. If you guys have any questions about any of the points that I'm making here, please unmute your mic or post in the chat. Okay, Damaris, feel free to either unmute your mic or post your question in the chat about citations.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask you, now we don't have to add the retrieve from to the list of found that article. It's correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Oh, thank you, teacher.
Okay, you're welcome. As you're checking the references, all right, make sure that the references are alphabetized. So make sure that the authors their names are alphabetized. A comes before B, comes before C. Make sure they're alphabetized, and make sure that they have at least 5 citations. I'm sorry, 5 references. Make sure that they have at least 5 references listed under the heading references. Omar, did you have any questions, or Lisette? Feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. You can unmute your mic and jump right in anytime to ask your questions.
Teacher, what
Yes.
happened if in the references it says doi, but it doesn't have doi?
Okay, so
How can we do that
all right, one of the
if we don't
changes,
have a doi?
okay, one of the changes to the current addition to the APA writing manual was that the DOI number now is in the form of a URL. All right, so if there's a DOI, it's going to be in the form of a URL. It's going to be a link. And so in that particular example, Ale, check your partner's work to see, maybe just leave a comment as a reminder to double check to see if there's a DOI, and if there's a DOI, it's going to be in the form of a link. And so that way it will just prompt your partner, it will just remind your partner to double check, first of all, to see if there is a DOI, like a URL. Right? But this was one of the changes. Before, we used to just be able to put DOI colon and then a number, but now it's in the form of a URL. So I would just remind your partner to double check that.
And what happened if we don't have it, teacher, or we can find it?
Right, if it doesn't exist, it's optional, right? So you don't have to include it if they don't have it. Each day, more and more citations and references are including a DOI, but it's still, possible that a reference will not have a DOI, so it is optional.
All right, thank you, teacher.
All right, you're welcome. Since we're checking references, take a look at the format, APA. Make sure that the references are single spaced within each reference and double spaced between each reference. And I'll type this also in the chat. Single space within each reference and double space between each reference. If anybody needs to see an example of this, let me know. These are things we've talked about last unit, but as I was looking through some of the first drafts, some of us need to look at this again, the spacing. So single space within each reference and double space between each reference. Again, double check your partner's work, leave comments, or at least leave notes to yourself to go back later to your partner's document to leave a comment. Make sure we're leaving nice comments, respectful comments, right? So we're here to try to help each other, right? So we want to be constructive about our feedback and respectful. Double check your citations of your partners. Make sure that we're also using APA formatting. Make sure that we only include the author's last name, that we're not using the first initial. So it's going to be the author's last name, comma, and then the year. If we have more than or if we have 3 or more, then we're going to need commas to separate the list of authors, the series of authors. So double check also the citations, make sure that there are no first initials included in the citations. Double check the spacing, right? Make sure there are no additional spacing between the parentheses and the text that comes after and before the parentheses within the citation. Make sure that the period that ends the sentence, that the citation is included inside the sentence. So the period comes after. There should be no period before the citation. Double check each of the citations of your partner's work to make sure that they're using correct punctuation. I'm including the link here, and I'm also going to include this link in Microsoft Teams. And you can refer to this later if you wish, but this is the presentation for the latest changes to APA. All right, so this also might be useful if you need to see some examples of things that we're talking about here today. All right, so let's look at the next point. Double check your partner's work to see that your partner has a title. Okay, so we want to try to include a title for now this first draft that's going to be due today. So for the title of the paper, this should be a level 1 heading. So a level 1 heading needs to be in bold. So make sure that if there's a title, if there's no title, ask that they include a title. And then include the following. Make sure the text is in bold. Make sure that the main words are capitalized. Basically, main words would be any word that is probably more than 3 letters long. So make sure the text is in bold, make sure that the main words are capitalized, and make sure that the level 1 heading is centered to the page. It should be centered to the page. The text should be the same text that is used throughout the document. Okay, so we'll check that here in a minute, but so make sure that the text is in bold, main words are capitalized, and it's centered. Also, double check that there's no ending punctuation. So no periods at the end. I think that's the most common punctuation mark that I typically see, but really no punctuation mark. There are some exceptions when titles are in the form of a question, but I would suggest, actually request, that you not create a title as a question. I would keep it as a declarative idea, as a statement. All right, so make sure that there's no ending punctuation. The last thing I would like for you to check, and this applies more to longer titles. All right, the title should be 6 to 12 words. All right, there should be anywhere from 6 to 12 words is a pretty good rule of thumb for your title. But for longer titles that are more than 1 line, double check to make sure that in longer titles that take up 2 lines, that both the first and second line of the title are approximately taking up the same amount of space across the page. All right, so a lot of times I'll see a long title and the first line goes almost all the way across the page, and then there's 1 word in the second line. All right, so we want to try as best you can to keep more or less the same length across the page for both lines of long titles. Again, if it's just one line, you don't have to worry about that. But many of you have longer titles, that's fine, as long as it's anywhere from 6 to 12 words. Make sure that there's equal space across the page for both lines 1 and 2 of the title. Double check your partner's work. Check all of those details, right? And leave a nice comment with your partner that relates to the title. Again, main and bold, main words are capitalized, centered to the page, no ending punctuation. And if it's a long title that takes up 2 lines, make sure that more or less there's an equal distance or space across the page for both the first and second line. I'm going to continue going through the points. If you guys need me to stop, repeat something, just interrupt, just jump in with your questions, okay? There's no problem. All right, so the next thing I want you to check, guys, is the number of sentences for each of your 5 paragraphs of your partner's work. Now remember that the only way that we're going to use to end a sentence, with the exception of possibly a hook as a question, is going to be a period, right? The only punctuation mark that officially completes a sentence is a period. So basically you're looking for periods in each of the paragraphs. All right, so check each of the 5 paragraphs and make sure that your partner has between 5 to 8 sentences in each of the 5 paragraphs of the argumentative essay: the introduction paragraph, the 3 body paragraphs, and the conclusion paragraph. 5 to 8 sentences. Again, the only punctuation mark that should be used is a period. So we're not going to be asking any questions unless it's the hook at the beginning of the introduction paragraph. So we're not going to use any exclamation marks either, right? So we're not going to be screaming in our essay. We're only going to use the period. Okay, so double check that really quickly. Make sure that your partner is writing 5 to 8 sentences in each of the paragraphs. And when you guys are looking at your partner's work, of course, if the points that I'm mentioning do not apply, then of course you don't need to leave any comments. Just for those points, those parts of the essay that they need to take another look at to change, right? So again, if your partner, if there's no issues, no problems, just leave it blank and go on to the next point. Speaking of the next point, take a look at your partner's work, and I'd like for you to check spacing. Now, there's going to be several points to this point here, all right? Some specific points. So the first is make sure that it's double spaced. And hopefully you can look at take a look at it at a glance, but you can also quickly select the text and look at the spacing icon to check if you can't tell at a glance. But make sure that all the text is double spaced. That's the first thing. Also check the spacing between the headings and the text. You basically have two headings for this 5-paragraph argumentative essay. The first heading is the title of the essay. That's a level 1 heading. And the second level 1 heading is the references that occurs after the essay, but before the list of references. All right, so make sure that there is no extra spacing. It should be double spaced between the heading and the text. There should be double space between the title of the essay and the first paragraph. Make sure there's no extra spacing. So if you can tell at a glance, there should be equal spacing between each of the lines of the text and the space between the title and the first word of the first paragraph. Does that make sense? Equal spacing, no extra spacing. By default, Microsoft Word likes to put extra spacing between paragraphs, and what that does is it'll create extra spacing between the title of the essay and the first word or the first paragraph, and just below the references heading in the first reference, it will also include extra spacing. So double check those two areas, the space in between the title of the essay and the first paragraph, and the space between the references heading and the first reference. Make sure it's double spaced, but no extra spacing between the heading and the text. If you notice extra spacing between the heading and the text, leave a nice comment to double check, to have your partner double check. And you can just say something like, please check the spacing again between the heading in the first paragraph or between the references heading and the first reference. The last thing about, well, it's not even the last thing. Another aspect of spacing, okay, a lot of details here. Make sure that you have equal spacing between paragraphs. Okay, just like we're checking spacing between the titles and the first paragraphs, we also want to make sure that we have double space, but equal spacing. That is not, or no additional spacing or extra spacing between paragraphs, between the first and second paragraph, the second and third paragraph, third and fourth paragraph, fourth and fifth paragraph. Make sure there's equal spacing. Everything is double spaced and everything is equal spacing. Double check the paragraphs for indentation. So the first line of the paragraphs should have a 0.5 indentation. Double check each of the 5 paragraphs to make sure that your partner included a 0.5-inch indentation.
Teacher,
Yes.
if it is in centimeters, it's supposed to be 1.27 centimeters.
Well, yeah, so first of all, I would try to change the unit of measure from centimeters to inches, only because it makes it easier. I think it's 1.27, what is it? 2.5 centimeters per inch. I always forget the calculation. I think it's 1.27. But it's hard. The point here is it's really hard to find the exact distance in centimeters because it's not a kind of a round number. Let me check here. Yeah, I think it's 1.27, something like that. Centimeters. But again, I would try to move it to inches. Then you've got a clear point, you know, where the indentation is. And when I open up the document, I already have my Word document set up as inches. So it will open up, your document will open up according to my units of measure. So again, I would just double check using inches just to make it easier.
Okay, teacher, I'm gonna do it. Thank
All
you.
right, you're welcome. Yeah, 1.27, that's hard to find. 1.27 centimeters. If you can find 1.27, go for it. All right, what else? Make sure that you have 1-inch margins all the way around, top, bottom, left, and right. And that this is usually default, okay? So most of the time, if you open up a Word document by default, the margins will be 1-inch margins. But I did see a few, I'm not sure what happened, maybe, I'm not sure, but I noticed that some of you have the text that with less of a margin, okay? So in the Word document, there's a way to look at the lines to see where the margins are, but I think the easiest is to go under layout, look under document layout, and just choose the default, the normal layout, and just make sure that it's set at the normal setting, which again is basically 1-inch margins, 1-inch top to bottom, left and right. All right, make sure also, guys, that your partner has citations in every paragraph except for the conclusion. All right, we probably need at least 6 citations throughout the entire essay. We need at least 1 citation in every paragraph except for the conclusion. And also I saw a few examples, or I remember one for sure, that there was a citation in the thesis statement. So make sure there is no citation in the thesis statement. We should have one, at least one in the introduction paragraph, but remember that that citation should support the context of the problem or the background information, which is the purpose of the introduction paragraph. So yes, we do need at least 1 citation in the introduction paragraph. We need to have at least 1 citation in the introduction paragraph that supports the context of the problem. So if you're offering a hook from the very first sentence of the introduction paragraph, or a statistic or a fact, you're going to need a citation to support that hook. Then you're going to need an additional citation to support the context of the problem. So take a look at your partner's work. Take a look very quickly to make sure they have at least 1 citation in all the paragraphs except for the conclusion. Make sure that they have at least 6 total citations, and make sure specifically in the introduction that they have at least 1 citation that supports the context of the problem. That's essentially going to be from the second sentence, anywhere from the second sentence to the second to the last sentence right before the thesis statement.
Teacher,
Yes.
for example, if there is a site that says Brown 2000 as cited in Miles 2014, I'm not supposed, well, or we are not supposed to write as cited now?
As cited in, like for indirect,
Yes, citation.
yeah, you know, I don't think we need to include that anymore. Let me double check here, 1 second. You know what? Let me double check this, Damaris, because I've actually seen different things and heard different. I want to make sure that I tell you guys correctly on indirect citations. So if you guys give me just a little bit later today, I'm going to post something in Microsoft Teams to double check this to make sure that we're doing this correctly for indirect citations. Okay, so for now, just leave it. And I will double check this to clarify indirect citations. These are citations where someone else is citing someone else, and we want to include that indirect citation, right, from that other person. Okay, so let me double check that. I don't remember offhand if I addressed this in the presentation. So when we finish class, if you guys want to take a look at that the presentation that I included in the chat, and I've got a class here at 9 o'clock. When I finish my class at 9 o'clock, I'm going to double check myself, and I will post something to Microsoft Teams to clarify again the indirect citations. Okay.
Okay, teacher, thank you.
All right. You're welcome. All right, guys. What else? I think for the most part, for our first draft, again, all the points that we talked about today, try to make those final changes to your document. Try to leave comments to your partner's work. Try to do that as soon as possible to give all of you as much time today as you need to make the final changes for your first draft. This is still for the first draft, and this is going to be for a grade for today. Tomorrow, we're going to continue the same dynamic. Now, continuing to work on our drafts as we work towards Friday, which is going to be our deadline for our final draft for our argumentative essay. It's going to be our final essay version for this assignment. All right. So again, I want to give everyone some additional time to complete the first draft. Those of you who were not able to complete the first draft, hopefully you can watch this recording to double check your own documents. And I'm going to share my screen once again to show you once again where to upload your first draft, considering the points that we talked about here today in class. So again, if you go into our Teams writing workshop under the General tab and you go under Files, you should see a folder that's titled Argumentative Essay First Drafts. Okay, if you click on this document, here's where I would like for you to upload your first drafts. Okay, your first draft. And please upload it as a document. Now, I know some of you, like Omar, I don't know if you want to take a look at the changes first that we talked about today before you upload. Because the whole point today here is to work with our partners to consider some of the points that we talked about today in class, and then give you time today to make those changes, to include those changes before you upload. So again, just make sure that you've made the changes. If you made the changes already, great. But please make sure that for the first draft for a grade that you're taking into consideration the points that we talked about today, because these are the points that I'm going to consider for the grade for the first draft. All right, so your titles, your spacing, indentation, margins, citations, references, making sure references are alphabetized, making sure that there's a reverse indentation and spacing for the references. Basically, everything that we've talked about today in class. Please review the points, work with your partners. If you have questions about aspects, I know I have one pending question for those who have questions about indirect citations, and I'm going to upload that here later this morning. But if you have questions regarding any of the points that we talked about today, you're best to send a message to me as soon as possible so that I can address your question and give you time to make that change. Okay, you can either send it in the post section here openly, right? If you want to post something there for everyone to see, or of course you can send me a chat in Microsoft Teams. All right, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and stop there for today. And please upload this for assignment. You have basically all day and tonight to complete this. And then tomorrow we'll continue looking at your drafts to make further changes.
Teacher, I have a
All right.
question.
All right. Thanks, guys. Yes, Scott, go
Sorry,
ahead.
sorry. For example, I begin my introduction paragraph with a question and followed by a citation. Can I do that or just choose one of those?
I think I would just choose one type of hook, right? So if you want to begin with a question, fine. If you want to begin with a famous quote, fine. If you want to begin with a important fact or statistic, fine. But I would choose one of those three and not any more than one of those types of hooks. I would just choose one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, guys, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Take care.